What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the Piscifun YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that is super important because it affects every fisherman out there. As a fisherman, the absolute worst feeling besides losing a big fish is breaking a fishing rod. Whether you slam it in a car door, you break the tip when you're walking, there are so many situations where you can break a fishing rod, and it really is a bummer because you spend your hard-earned money to go out there and buy a new rod, and the last thing you want to do is break it because you were negligent or on accident or whatever it might be. So in today's video, we're going to talk about a few things, a few tips that you can do to make sure that you're not breaking your fishing rods. Now, no one wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to be the one that ends up with a broken rod. So we are going to talk about those tips right now to make sure that you are not breaking your fishing rods. Tip number one, protect your fishing rods. Your fishing rods are on the boat deck, in the boat locker, in the back of your truck, in the back of your car, in your garage. I mean, your rods really go all over the place, and they're in a lot of situations where they can be scratched, the eyes can be broken. I mean, there's just so many situations. Picking up some of these inexpensive rod covers is going to help you at least protect your rods cosmetically and not have them get scratched and dinged and messed up. This is tip number one. Very simple, very easy, and very cost efficient. Just grab some of these rod covers. They make them both for casting and for spinning rods. The difference is the mouth is a lot larger on the spinning rod to get over the enlarged guides. When you use these rod covers, it's really going to protect your rod overall, no matter where it is, whether it's in the rod locker, garage, back of the truck. So pick up some rod covers. That's tip number one. Tip number two. Tip number two, honestly, is another easy one. It just requires you to be a little bit more disciplined with your rod care. You saw earlier where I slammed my rod into the door. Now that happens way more than I would like to admit to a lot of anglers all across the world. So how do we avoid that? It's pretty simple, guys. Don't put your rods near your trunk or near your car door until you are ready to load them into the vehicle. So what we do normally is we walk up, we're getting ready, we set our rods here, and then what are we having? We're having a situation where bad things can happen. As soon as we open this is very easily going to slide into here, and you could slam that door on those rods. So just avoid having your rods anywhere around a door or a tailgate or anything like that until you're actually ready to load them. So walk up, open your door, and then go ahead and load your rods. This simple tip will definitely help you avoid breaking rods in the future. Now, another tip, guys, and this is what I see a lot of times with anglers who are really new to fishing and they're starting out and they're doing shore fishing. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna be walking with their fishing poles. And what they like to do is they like to hold their rods by the handles and they hold the tips down toward the ground. People will walk and they'll have their tips pointing down at the ground like this. The angle is downward. And what will happen is one of those rod tips will catch the ground, and because of the angle, it will immediately snap that rod tip right off. Now that is the last thing you want when you're going out on a fishing trip, because your fishing trip is pretty much done. Whenever you're carrying your rods, be aware of your surroundings, okay? So when you're walking, if you're in an open area, hold your rods like this, straight up and down, you'll have no problem. If you start walking through the woods or in enclosed trails or anything where you're gonna have some overhead trees or brush or anything like that, you really have to be aware and keep good rod discipline. If you're walking through an area that is going to have bushes, trees, anything overhead, you can always carry your rods like this, okay? It'll have a good balance point. And when those rods are balanced, they tend not to tip down or not to tip up. So find the balance point in your rods, which is about right there for these. And that way, when you carry them at your side, they're gonna be horizontal. And you can see where the tips are going, and you know that the butt of the rod is just behind you. So that way you can avoid the tips dipping down and having those tips snap off. Okay, guys, your next tip. Having this many rods on your boat deck can be a recipe for disaster. What you want to try to do at all times is try to declutter your boat deck. Put away the rods that you don't plan to use in the next couple of hours of your fishing trip, or spread them out to either side of the deck. It can be really easy to step on a rod, break a guide, crack a blank, any of those things when you are walking around trying to land a fish and things are crazy and hectic. So try to declutter that deck, put those rods in a rod locker or put them back by the passenger seat, anywhere where you can kind of keep them out of the way of being underfoot. So let's take a look at what it would look like if we would declutter it a little bit. All right, now as you can see, I've only got 3 rods on this side. There's a lot of deck space for me to walk without stepping on my rods. I have this whole area that I can walk in. Before, I had rods all the way out to this point, and that's gonna make it really, really tough not to step on a rod by accident. Last but not least, I wanna talk to you about high sticking a rod. High sticking is undoubtedly one of the highest contributions to broken rods in fishing. So basically what high sticking is when you're fighting a fish or swinging a fish into the boat when you catch it, and you end up putting the angle of your rod at greater than 45, so 45 would be about here, to 60. 45 to 60 is the safe range. Once you start getting above 60 and you start getting into that straight up angle, that tip becomes very susceptible to breaking because the actual bend in the rod has now left. There is no angle to create a curve, and now that rod will just snap off if you pull on that tip. So make sure when you're fighting a fish, you're always keeping your rod from that 45 up to that 60. But once you go higher, then you're really in that danger zone. And the big thing is when you're flipping or swinging a fish into the boat, when you go to swing that fish, it's very easily to go like this when you have that fish coming in. So make sure that when you swing it, you're keeping a bend in your rod, and then you won't have that high stick breakage. Well guys, I hope the tips in this video are gonna help you keep your rods just a little bit safer. Like I said before, as anglers, the worst thing you can have happen is to buy a new rod or be on a fishing trip and have that rod break. So these little things that you can do in your daily fishing trips are gonna help you keep those rods safer. That way you don't end up like me with a broken fishing rod. Now I do wanna say no rods were actually harmed in the making of this video because this rod was actually already an older broken rod that was not working well. So I just used it for demonstration purposes today. So don't worry, I didn't waste a fishing rod. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you think this video was helpful, go ahead and drop me a comment and hit that like button. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button as well. I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you so much for watching.